Listener advisory. This is just a stupid podcast we're doing for shits and giggles. So we apologize to any of you poor bastards that have to be subjected to, well, you know, all of this. If you stick around long enough, I'm sure you'll see what I mean. If you find dark humor and discussing awful shit with a bit of levity distasteful, well, how do you exist? Seriously, you must have a secret and I don't even want it. But really, this podcast will not be for you. And you'd probably be better off listening to any of the more somber-toned true crime podcasts that are available. For those of you still listening, you sick and twisted fucks, welcome to the worst. If we did this right, hopefully you won't like yourself by the end, but you'll laugh. Hello and welcome to The Worst, the podcast of everything that is the worst. I'm your host, Mark, and not sitting next to me is my usual wife and co-host, Gina. That's weird to say, my usual wife. But instead, these are the episodes where Gina will be out. Right? These are the episodes where my wife will be out for a while, so we're bringing in some guest hosts. And today, we have a longtime friend of the podcast, Bill Selby from Crimes, Killers, Cults, and Beer covering for us. So, sitting virtually next to me is Bill. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here again, and on a much more interesting subject than I was on the last time I was on your show. Yeah. So, yeah. It was you came on CKCB for Mad Dog. And then I came on for the
Yips. That's right. That was the sports one award because this one, yeah. I guess I'll do the usual. You want to hear a story?
But now we're going to talk about war.
Right. Well, this week we're covering a. Oh, nice. And I'm on a ton of fucking animals, and it's the middle of the afternoon, so it's going to be a weird
I'm drinking Bud Light.
But yeah, this week we are covering a war-based subject, but it's my type of war subject because it's not glorious. It's not everything went fine and the battle went great and everyone who won should have. No, it's a fucking disaster on the run-up to a battle. God, I love war when it happens like this because, you know, nothing goes right. Not to get off track off the start, but you know, like, I do a lot of history, and I'm not big on the old glorious war and everything, you know, everyone's a hero and everything goes great, because this type of shit happens so much, and it's always covered up, and we find out tons of years later that, oh my God, this happened. So this week we're covering Exercise Tiger. Like Passchendaele. Yeah, like, I mean, people knew the battle happened, but no one knew.
Like Passchendaele.
Drowning in the mud.
Yeah, that story is horrific. Yeah, I just want to give a little promo for an episode that's coming up on CKCB. We're doing a war story.
Sense.
I got to thinking, because we did the USS Indianapolis a while back, and that episode has kind of creeped into our top 10 most listened to, and I didn't see that coming. It's a good episode.
Which one?
But I'm like, you know what, let's try another one. So I'm doing the World War I Attack of the Dead Men. It's Auschwitz and the Battle of Auschwitz, Fort Auschwitz, the fort at Auschwitz, where the Germans, it was one of the first times that the Germans launched chemical weapons on a major scale. Yeah, so we're gonna do that one. And what happened is the Germans gassed the Russians, and the Russians dying, you know, their innards are being destroyed and everything. They charged and pushed the Russians back, or pushed the Germans back. So it looked like freaking zombies.
As they shit their innards out. That sounds awful. Oh my God. So when's that coming out? That's going to be a fun one. I'm looking forward to that.
A week from Thursday.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. So I guess that would be just so we actually have a date. My laptop's not going to work because it's a piece of crap. Anyway, so yeah, that's good. It's funny that we're both doing some war stories.
The 30th.
The third. Thank you very much. Someone here is a professional. That's why I need a co-host, man. Without someone to keep me on track, it's over. So this week we're covering Exercise Tiger, and this was a disastrous dress rehearsal for the D-Day invasion. in very short, it's American troops getting ready to land on the beach of D-Day in June 1944. This is like a month before May 1944, and they're trying to do the dress rehearsal on an English beach, and they
I've never heard this.
Everything goes wrong. They end up sitting in the English Channel, just bobbing there in their boats for like a day. So the Germans find out they're there, and then packed. And in short, more people die in this exercise than die on the beach that they attacked on D-Day.
Holy shit.
Yeah, because we have to do a little bit of like historical. This is okay, you know, like Saving Private Ryan and shit. That depicts Omaha Beach, and on D-Day there were 5 beaches attacked. 2 were American beaches. Omaha was one, and it was the fucking worst of the day. Utah was the other, and this was the training for the invasion of Utah Beach. So, yeah, this is so bad, because everything went smoothly until very late in the exercise, because this is a multiple-day exercise. And then everything that could go wrong went wrong in a period of about 24 hours. In the end, at least 749 servicemen were lost. Almost 4 times as many as were lost on the actual attack on Utah Beach. Now, on top of the nearly 700, at least 750 people lost, this disaster nearly blew the entire D-Day plan.
For everybody?
For everyone, because this was a month before the actual invasion, and it gave the Germans... They basically saw landing ships landing on the type of beach that was going to be attacked. They saw exactly how everything was going to be laid out, and they knew, like, the Germans knew it was coming, but now they knew it's extremely close, and they pretty much know where it's going to come. So that's not good. It also rattled the highest levels of the Allied command, because, I mean... You're a month out from the biggest move you're making of the war so far, and you almost blew it in an exercise. So, you know, it kind of rattled them a little bit. But in the good sense, it did lead to some changes that probably saved lives during the actual invasion, because that's why you do these things. You know what I mean? It's almost like practicing sports. This is why. So you figure out, oh, this is going to fuck up.
But
maybe
the
we
thing
should look...
is in sports like football, during practices, they wear those goofy looking super padded helmets. You know, the thing is, the point is to not get hurt, or translate that to military, not lose people during a fucking exercise.
Absolutely. I gotta mention, though, I don't follow football that closely. I recently saw those fucking helmets, and I was like, is this a meme? Is this a joke? What is that? It's a fucking cone. What is happening? Yeah, it's funny you should mention that.
It looks like the frickin' helmets on the guys in Spaceballs.
Oh my god, it does too. I was thinking it looks like something South Park would do to make fun of football, and they actually did it. So
that too.
There you go. And it's like, oh my god. So to set all this up, we need to do a super fast crash course on World War II. Now, this should be fast with you, obviously, but not everyone knows as much as, let's be honest, middle-aged men who basically, you know, do this for fun.
Right.
Yeah. In super short, Hitler's Nazi Germany opened the war in the fall of 1939 by basically running over Poland. This was followed by, and I love bringing this up anytime I can, I will, the Phony War. Because during the winter of 1939-1940, the first winter of the biggest war in human history, nothing happened. Just nothing happened. There's a month between Finland and the USSR. It's really interesting, but it's not relevant to what we're talking about. Then in the spring,
Right. I know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is kind of relevant. So, I mean, in very short, the Russians do so poorly versus the Finns, who are not a big country, that Germany kind of looks and is like, I wonder if we attacked them, what would happen? Happens then.
what Russia's doing. Kind of like what Russia's doing with Ukraine right now, getting their asses kicked.
Kind of thinking, yeah, this will be 3 weeks, we'll be in Kiev, and it'll be over, and then the Ukrainians are like, do you know we have a saying in our culture that's... I love that the Ukrainians have a saying that says, basically, no matter how bad life gets as a Ukrainian, at least we're not Russian. That's one of my favorites. And that is an old saying.
Force, too, because they're trying to take over the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God. I mean, it's not good, but yeah, that's what they're finding out, is that a determined people on their own land defending can kind of be difficult. So, yeah, then after what was the phony war, in the spring of 1940, Germany attacked France, and this is where we got the Blitzkrieg that we all know, and I wouldn't say love, that's a terrible fucking way to put it, but you know what I mean. If you
it's
know,
like when somebody asked me who my
War...
favorite. It's like when somebody asked me who my favorite serial killer is. I don't have a favorite serial killer.
I know, like, I have a couple guys that are like, they stand out because of their story, but I don't have favorites. Come on, man, that's a bad way to put it.
I mean, I know they don't mean it like that, but it just irks me whenever I hear somebody say that. Like, who's your favorite serial killer?
I know, because I just irked myself by saying the Blitzkrieg we know and love. Like, man, fucking what is wrong with me?
Well, you can't. It is okay to love the Blitzkrieg bop.
I mean, the Ramones have their moments, but yeah, this is the part that most people know, is that within 6 weeks, I mean, Germany just runs over France because France doesn't know what the fuck to do, because this is something completely new, and we also have the British barely making it back to England with the evacuation of Dunkirk. They have a whole fucking movie about it. That's an interesting story. It's an interesting story that I'd like to do sometime, but once again, I'm into war history. So after this, the Nazis set up an occupation of northern and western France, and then a puppet state controlling the south of France. This is known as Vichy France. So this is when, once again, if you know much about the war, you'll hear about Britain's darkest hour, and this is it, because this is where Hitler started the aerial battle of Britain in preparation for a possible invasion. Because at this point, Britain's on its own. The US is not in the war in 1940. Mm-hmm. The USSR is not in the war in 1940. It's literally Britain, and it's... I can say this because I'm from Canada. It's Britain and its shitty Commonwealth countries doing what it can. Like, I'm sorry, but we're Canada. We'll do what we can, but we're not stopping the fucking Germans. Are you kidding? Not on our own. You know what I mean? Like, you want some more backing than just... I love Canada, I love Australia, and blah, 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 but you want more than that, just them showing up when you're looking at Hitler and his methed up fucking tankers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're kind of sitting like, come on. So this all changed in 1941. First in the summer, when Germany invaded USSR, which turned out to be a very bad mistake. And later in December, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Also a very huge mistake.
I gotta wonder if Hitler, when Japan did that, like, what the fuck are they thinking? What are you doing? What? If the Americans in the war? Mein Kampf perfect again.
It's so... it's hard to tell. I mean, it's funny, though, because later he's the one who declares war on America. Because obviously America declares war on Japan instantly. Like, that just happens.
Oh, yeah.
But
But they probably would have done it anyway. They probably would have done it anyway just because. It's like, well, we're here.
Well, that's the thing, because there are a couple days where President Roosevelt is sitting and he's like, I want to declare war on Germany. I don't know if I can. And then Hitler, like you did, pretty much in the voice you did, was like, I can't do a Hitler voice. But it was like, hey, America, you know what? Fuck you too. You're fighting Japan? Well, fuck you. Let's do this. And it's like, all right.
He probably figured that dividing America's forces would be beneficial to him. That's probably exactly what he thought.
He probably thought it was going to come at some point too. Like, it's hard to tell because there's not much. A lot of people think too that Japan and Nazi Germany, collaborate a lot. They really have their own wars going on and don't talk to each other. So it's hard to tell what Hitler's reasoning was, but a couple days later, he says, fuck you, America, you're in this war too. And within days, the U.S. is now involved in two massive wars on the opposite ends of the globe. Like, fuck, man, I didn't expect this before Christmas, but here we are.
I tell you what, the Band of Brothers series and then the Pacific, I love those. They're excellent.
How many series are there? Because I think I saw the first one and was actually surprised because I'm not huge on, like...
The Band of Brothers, which was the first one, it was really good. And then the second one was the Pacific Theater. And then they're doing another one. They've got another one in the works, and I'm not sure what it's about. But there is another one in the works, and I can't wait for it to come out.
I know specifically then, if the first one is in Europe, that's the one I saw. Because I remember one guy he's an Italian-American, and they're walking through the forest. And he says something to the effect of, man, Italians do not like forests. And another guy asks him why, and he starts listing off every time fucking Roman armies were just decimated in forest attacks. He's like, there's the battle.
I really loved their coverage of the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
I really loved how they did.
Winter War is fun.
Yeah. That series blew me away. And then the Pacific. I mean, it you can't compare one. You can't say one's better than the other because it's like apples and oranges.
What's your favorite war? Sorry,
they're both
just like your favorite serial killer.
War?
What's your favorite war? Oh fuck, man, I can't answer that for so many reasons on so many levels.
The Great Emu War.
That is one. We're covering that at some point. The fucking emus won. Jesus Christ.
That's my favorite war.
I think that one. There's also another one. I think it's in somewhere in Eastern Africa where it's a native whoever tells the British to fuck off and says I'm king, and the British just have warships like right there, and it takes 28 minutes of shelling, and dude's like, you know what? I'm out. This was a mistake.
Yay! Check, please.
Right. Fucking no, I'm out. That was more than I expected. Okay, well, let's go back to normal.
Oh, hey there. You like true crime stories, right? Yeah, I know, who doesn't? But I gotta admit, after a while, all those stories of murder and heartache, well, they tend to go straight to my hips. So that's why I, Leroy Luna, have created a podcast called Excuse Me, That's Illegal, where we'll take a hardcore look at some softcore crimes. No TED Talks on Bundy here. The letters BTK won't be coming from these lips. Unless he had a brother that used to steal library books. Suppose I'd be willing to go balls deep into that one if that were the case. Anyways, you'll hear stories such as the Mad Pooper, a female jogger who wreaked havoc in a Colorado Springs neighborhood, using one family's front yard as her own personal dumping grounds. If this kind of content sounds like it's up your alley, Excuse Me, That's Illegal is available right now on all your favorite podcatchers. So come join me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
So, back on track. As soon as Germany had attacked the USSR, Soviet leader, another one we all know and love, Joseph Stalin, he was asking the Western Allies to open a second front against the Nazis in Europe, basically to relieve the pressure on the USSR. And it would take 2 years before the Western Allies were able to step foot on European soil, and even then, this wasn't where Stalin had expected. Like, he's expecting, you need to land in France and start pushing towards Germany to, make this stop. Because if you know about the Eastern Front in the Second World War, you could make a fucking horror podcast about that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the first activity of the Western Allies was in North Africa, where basically there's the North African Campaign, which started in 1940. This is where the Allies cleared the Italians and Nazis out of the region, but it takes until May 1943. Then in July of 1943, the Allies finally made it to Europe by invading Sicily. Sicily is an island off of Italy. It really doesn't help much. And then soon, there's the aerial bombardments of German cities. This goes into the Italian campaign where finally the Allies invade Italy. But still, this isn't what is needed for, the Western invasion. Stalin still needs the invasion of France to take the pressure off. I mean, that's basically it, though. Like, Stalin, like I say, they have a fucking battle called the Battle of Rezhov during this time with 1 million casualties. There is no record of this battle because it's like the 4th or 5th rated battle going on at the time on the Eastern Front. Like, seriously, try to look up the Battle of Rezhov. There's nothing. And it's like 1 million people were killed, basically in a bog. It's like, what? Oh, yeah, by the way, there was a concentration camp in the middle of the battle. Are you fucking kidding me? That's all the information. Seriously, like, it's so Russian because there's nothing on it, and it's the most horrible thing I've ever fucking heard of. Now, for their part, I hate to put it this way, but, I love history. The Western Allies were kind of fine with leaving the USSR to fight the Nazis solo as long as possible. You guys got this, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean... And to be honest, sometimes I can be rough on the U.S., but this time, they're the ones with the best excuse. We're fighting in the Pacific basically fucking solo.
Right.
We got other shit on our plate. Britain, what the fuck are you doing? Like, come on, guys. Like, shit, get your shit together. Seriously, though, it takes quite a while. And it's not until the early summer of 1944 when D-Day was planned to happen. Basically, by this point, I mean, the Eastern Front is already moving towards Germany. So the USSR had already succeeded in pushing the Nazis out of Russia and the Ukraine, and they were gearing up for Operation Bagration. This is the 5th in what would be called Stalin's 10 blows, and this is credited, like Operation Bagration. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, so I apologize. But this is credited as being the destruction of the Nazi army group center. In very short, the Nazis have 3 major armies in the Eastern Front. This one breaks the one in the middle. So in another crash course, the entire idea of D-Day was to open this second front against Hitler by landing 7 divisions by sea and 3 divisions by air on 5 beaches on Normandy in northern France. This would be the leading edge of a massive force that had gathered in southern England that were all sitting waiting to cross the English Channel as soon as the beaches were secured by this force. If everything went right, over 100,000 would be landed on the first day of the invasion, and after linking up these 5 beachheads, a breakout would be attempted by follow-up forces. These are the guys waiting in southern England to come across.
Hold on, I got a question.
Give her.
Is this a difference in strategy, like general war strategy? Because like you've got the the Russians and the Germans that are throwing like millions of people, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people against each other and everything. Meanwhile, you've got the United States, and they're giving you 100,000 at the most.
Yeah.
It's a kind of what do you? Yeah, that's just something that I've never thought of before. It just popped into my head when you were talking about the, million,
the scale of that's
people.
Kind of the thing is that the Eastern Front is taking up so much that they know pretty much anything on the Western Front, i.e. France, is going to be a huge pain in the ass. And even though it's only starting off with 10 divisions, 100,000 people, that's the leading edge for what will be, I think it's a couple million that end up coming across. But even by the end, if you look at it, it's funny you should mention it, because if you look at the very end of the war in Europe, the distribution of the USSR divisions lined up against the Allied divisions, the USSR could have pushed on like it was nobody's business and taken all of Europe at the end of the Second World War. Because the Allies are outnumbered about 3 to 4 to 1, I want to say. And had Stalin decided, we know what's going to happen here, let's just do this, there's not much we could have done. So, The entire time, the Western Front, what we know as D-Day and all the stuff we know from the Second World War after that, it's not it's a major front, but compared to the East, it's not nearly as big as what goes on there.
Okay. Makes sense.
So along,
It just,
yeah,
just popped into my head. It's just like,
but I mean, it's pretty much like you said about like war strategy. If you have, I assume you play war strategy games. If you're in a major war with someone on your eastern flank, if someone out of nowhere shows up on your western flank with even a tenth of what you're already fighting, it's such a pain in the ass because now you have
well,
to.
I never played Risk, but I always wanted to. But I do know chess, so the same what you're saying applies.
I've started playing chess, and it does relate because all of a sudden, attacks from
All of a sudden, there's a knight coming up, but you didn't even see it coming.
you fucking knights, man. Of course, it's a knight. God damn it. I have trouble with knights, but yeah, I mean, it's like I play quite a few war simulation games, and it happens all the time that all of us, you're fighting one dude and someone else shows up on another place, and it's like, great, now I have to redeploy for that and make plans for it, and it's going to take away from my major focus over here, and it just becomes a fucking nightmare. So, along with making a plan, getting forces together, and trying to find the best timing for D-Day, a failed amphibious raid in 1942 played heavy on the planners' minds. On August 19th, 1942, a predominantly Canadian force conducted a mass-scale raid on the French port town of Dieppe. Now, the goal of this raid was to take key positions around the town, get as many prisoners as possible, get as much info as possible, and then get the fuck out, go back to England, and if everything went right, it was supposed to take 9 hours, and they were going to be home, back in England, by that evening. The raid didn't go quite as planned.
No, of course not.
No, God, no. I love this story because I would love to cover the Dieppe raid. A big part of it was a lack of air cover. And in short, what happened is, okay, this is mostly a Canadian force. The plan is made by the British. And late in the game, the British said, hey, Canadians, what would happen if on the day we have planned for this, we already have the date set, if that date came and the weather was shit and we couldn't get planes up, would you still go ahead with it? The Canadians said yes, because this is a green Canadian force that really wants some action. The British planners took this to...
Be careful what you wish for.
Right. Oh, they got some action. That is very fucking true. God damn. And the British planners, being British, took this to mean, well, they don't really need air cover then, do they? If they without it.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
exactly. So there was very, very little air cover. There was also there was supposed to be a naval bombardment. It was ineffective, and a big part was the inability of the Canadian tanks to get off the beach, which was made of shingle. It was not sand. It was a shingle beach. The tanks got bogged down. Some of the troops landed in the wrong places. The overall
What's shingle? I only know shingles is the things that go on roofs. And it's something that people get when they get about my age.
Honestly, it's a lot like that, though. It take kind of rock that is almost not slippery, but has a feel to it that your fingers almost slide across it. And if you've seen rock where it's very layered, so you can almost pull chunks off in long, big, chunky, sharp, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's pretty much a lot like shale, but smaller. So it's really hard to move across, especially for a tracked vehicle like a tank. You're just going to spin all of that up. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. The tanks can't get off the beach. The troops basically get stuck on the beach. Almost no objectives were achieved, and as the raid became a bloody battle of survival, the Allied forces did what they could to hold on until they could be evacuated. For the majority of the soldiers, though, there would be no evacuation. Of the just over 6,000 troops landed that day, about 3,500 were either killed or taken prisoner. with the survivors being evacuated by 2 that afternoon. In every sense, this raid had been a failure.
Not a successful failure. Just
On a
failure.
personal note, way back in the 90s when I was a teenager, there was a guy who lived in my hometown named Herman Payne. He was a survivor of the Dieppe raid, and he was fucked. He was normal beforehand. He was fucked afterwards for life. Like, this was the 90s. Yeah, he was still a fucking mess, and such a mess you felt bad for him. Even as a fucking stupid punk teenager, you felt bad for Herman.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, I lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina for a while, which is where the Fort Bragg, the 82nd Airborne Division is, and it's crazy because I've lived there and I've lived in Clarksville, Tennessee, which is where the 101st Airborne is. So it's like
funny.
I've lived in both towns, but and I made some really good friends with from both of them. But I worked at a car dealership, and there was I have seen some of these soldiers that have been in battle and everything. I've seen them just lose it. I've seen it, and it's heartbreaking. Like, there was this one guy, and he had gone out to his car. He was having he was just having a meltdown. He had gone out to his car and like whacked down a bottle of like a flask of whiskey or something. And he came back and he's just like, yeah, fucking good time. He's like start talking about shit that he'd said and done.
Yeah.
And his buddy came up and he's just like, dude, come on. I'm like, and I'd seen the whole thing. He looked at me. He looked at me and he's like. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were telling me, it's like, please don't tell. I'm like, I'm not going to say a word.
Now, the Normandy invasion, i.e. D-Day, was meticulously planned and prepared for about a year before it happened, so the planning starts in 1943. With a massive force of men and equipment being gathered in southern England, the Nazis were sure. They fucking knew. They saw this. They saw the accumulation, and they were like, okay, it's coming. We know it's coming. They're going to attack in France. Question is, where? The most obvious place to invade northern France from England was the Pas de Calais. Shit, I fucked that up. The Pas de Calais, about 50 kilometers or 30 miles across the English Channel from Dover. It's literally the shortest possible crossing from England, so you have the least amount of time at sea possible. And it's actually closer to the heart of Germany, which is the whole fucking point of this. Eventually we're going for Germany. You're not going to get much closer than the Pas de Calais. Even though it is the obvious place to land, the Allied planners thought the Pas de Calais was way too obvious, and they decided, we're not going to land there. We're going to land to the west in Normandy. They hoped the resistance would be lighter here, and the extra distance the invasion force would have to cross in the channel, it wouldn't really matter if the weather held up. Basically, if you can get your ships across, you're more worried what you're going to hit on the land. You know what I mean? Like an extra 20 kilometers at sea for these ships. This isn't the days of fucking sailing wooden ships. You guys got this, right? Now, the planners, they went to great lengths to hide the fact that they were going to assault Normandy instead of the Pas de Calais. So they actually set up an entire fake army, the first U.S. or the FUSAG army, and they had everything. They had fake tanks, they had fake troops, they had fake fucking radio traffic. They actually put General Patton, who was known as the most aggressive general that the Allies had, in charge of this fake army, completely selling the Germans on the fact that, okay, this is the one right across from the Pas de Calais, this is where they're coming. And it fucking worked.
Brace yourself for a journey into the darkest corners of human nature with the Mortal Musings Podcast, available wherever you get your podcast. Join host Neil and Megan each week as they travel to the chilling world of true crime and macabre stories. From fringe socialites with hidden secrets to chilling tales from death row, they leave no stone unturned. They also bring you the strange and intriguing stories of oddities that will leave you questioning your very reality. Each episode of the Mortal Musings Podcast is a roller coaster ride through the bizarre and unsettling. New episodes drop every Wednesday. The Mortal Musings Podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all podcast platforms. If you crave the dark, the mysterious, and the utterly bizarre, you'll want to add the Mortal Musings Podcast to your podcast playlist. The Mortal Musings Podcast with host Neil and Megan. We take the cases seriously, but not ourselves. Available wherever you get your podcast.
There's another story that wasn't something similar, that wasn't sold. I believe it was the Germans. They set up this fake airfield with wooden planes and stuff like that and everything, made it look like it was done. And then when they were finally done, I believe it was either the British or Israeli troops. They flew, or not troops, but airmen. They flew over and they dropped a wooden bomb on the ground.
That's fucking good. That's good.
I think it was British.
Both sides did that a lot too. I mean, the British during the Battle of Britain, because of like how tight it is, they do that a lot. They sold it. I think honestly, it's the fact that they put Patton in charge. Because I mean, if you know the Allied,
the British weren't fooled at all. They're like, they probably had spies on the ground. They're like, the fuck are these guys doing?
Yeah, nice try there, Nazi boy. But yeah, it's not going to sell.
So they drop one wooden bomb on the plane.
That's British. Like, I mean, I don't even know if it actually happened, but there's a great scene in the movie A Bridge Too Far, which is all about after D-Day, they try to break out from the beachheads, and it's an idea that if we do airborne drops behind the Germans, then we can link up from the beaches and take this huge swath of land and basically free the Netherlands. And it's 3 bridges they're supposed to take. The one at Nijmegen's the one that's literally too far, and everyone gets, taken prisoner. Anyway, the whole point is, during one of the scenes of the movie is the British, who are like out of ammo, out of food, they're fucked. And the Germans are like, come on, let us take you prisoner. We don't want to kill you. And the British respond, we'd love to take you prisoner right.
Nuts.
No, it's actually fucking, we'd love to take you prisoner right now, but we don't actually have the facilities. So maybe you should go back to your lines. And the Germans just like, what the fuck? Well, did they not hear me? So he repeats it. And the British are just like, you heard us. We're not going fucking anywhere. So, that's a very British.
Well, that's the reason I said, well, you know why
nuts
I said nuts.
That is Battle of the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge. The 101st commander on the ground. They're like, the Germans are like, okay, you can surrender.
Yeah, right.
Nuts.
Right. I mean, it's a good response.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I think "go fuck yourself" would have been better though.
So,
if it happened today, that's what they would have said.
It wouldn't be good. Oh. Whew. Now, this whole operation to deceive the Germans on where the D-Day invasions were going to happen, it actually had a name, and it was called Operation Quicksilver. And like I said, it was very effective. I'm sorry?
I've heard of that.
I actually hadn't. I hadn't heard the name. Like, I had heard about all of this, but I didn't know it had a specific name. So, I'm learning.
No, it's just the name rings a bell. I don't remember exactly what it was.
But still,
the name rings a bell.
Now, to the Nazis, to the Germans, I mean, they're Germans, so it just doesn't make sense to attack anywhere but the Pas de Calais, because it's logical. Why would you do Normandy? That's stupid. So they put pretty much everything they had at the Pas de Calais, and in fact, I didn't know this, 15 reserve divisions, which is a fucking, once again, this initial attack is by 10 divisions. 15 reserve divisions were kept around the Pas-de-Calais region for a full 7 weeks after D-Day because the Germans believed until that time that this whole Normandy thing was a distraction from the real invasion that was coming at the Pas-de-Calais. 7 weeks, nearly 2 full fucking months, they kept 15 divisions back because by this time, man, the Allies are way out of the beachheads and shit, and they're still thinking this is just a big distraction. So that's how effective this was, like the Operation Quicksilver, to deceive the Germans. It really worked. Now back to Exercise Tiger. Sorry for all the background once again, but I think it's kind of important. I like to babble about war. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, hell, we covered Marcel Petiot, and leading up to that, I gave a brief history of the invasion of France and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't really consider that like a war episode like this one, or like the Attack of the Dead Men, or the USS Indianapolis, but
yeah,
it's war related.
Exactly. No, I get you. Now, Exercise Tiger was, like we've mentioned, it was for the training for the invasion of Utah Beach, which was going to be done by the 4th U.S. Infantry Division. So, you want these guys to have some training, some idea of what the fuck they're doing. So an area in southern England called Slapton Sounds on Lime Bay was chosen for the training because it was very similar to Utah Beach. It looks like what they're going to be fighting on. It's the same kind of beach, relatively similar countryside afterwards. It's going to give them an idea of what's coming.
Right.
And this wasn't
In a
the
perfect
only
world.
it probably helped the people that survived. Other than the 750 plus who died, the rest were like, it helped. It looked similar. We've seen death now. Like, fucking, we've heard a boat full of our friends burning. Is it going to get worse? We're ready. Let's fucking do this. God. Now, this wasn't the only exercise in the or the only fatal one at that. During the training early in the year, at least 50 men had been killed on March 11th in a friendly fire incident. And Exercise Tiger itself was risky for many reasons. Once again, this is a month before D-Day, so this is your results. So first you have, this is an amphibious landing. So, shit can just go wrong when you're dealing with heavily laden coming off of ships into the sea. Right, these guys are wearing like 60 pounds of gear. Have you ever gone 60 pounds of gear? You're going to sink like a fucking stone.
I don't think I've ever gone swimming with 5 pounds of gear.
Right, so if anything goes wrong there, shit can go wrong really fucking quick. And that's the simplest bet. That's just getting off the fucking boat. Second, this was a live fire exercise, which meant there were warships just behind the landing ships pounding live ammunition onto the beach. What could go wrong? From the beach, bullets were being shot.
At least use blanks.
No. We want them to see shit blowing up. And, this makes it more fun. What can go wrong? Also, from the beach, shots were being shot over the heads of the soldiers to simulate being shot at. Basically, the Allied commanders wanted the 4th Division to be acclimatized to live fire, as this was a green unit that had no battle experience.
I'm rubbing off on you.
Holy fuck, how did I blew that 3 times. That's impressive.
I'm rubbing off on you.
God. I do that a lot, though, man. If I put these out on Edit, people would just think, can this guy even fucking talk? This idiot was like...
I don't even edit them out because it's funny.
Sometimes I do because they're just so fucking egregious. I'm annoyed with myself. It's like, man. But other times I know that...
No, you got to own it. You got to be like...
I know there's one where I was recently, too, where it was the first fucking written line, and I just completely blew it, and I left it, because I was like, yep, that was perfect. And I blew it badly. It wasn't even close. Fuck.
I got in the Picton series. I got tongue tied. Bill 40. I got tongue tied on my own name.
That's all right. I wrote my own name wrong the other night. Fuck, man. It's a long week. How many fucking eyes are in this? Jesus. Who fucking named me? I blame you. Fuck. All right. Back on track. The third big danger here is that Lyme Bay, where this was happening, this was in the English Channel. So it's off of southern England, literally a couple kilometers from northern France. If you remember, this is where Germany now occupies northern France. So it's literally about 20 kilometers from the fucking German shore. So, if they take a look, they might see something. And for this type of thing, they actually had a boat. They had what were called E-boats. We're going to talk about E-boats here in a second. But these were basically super pumped up speedboats that were heavily armed and perfectly suited for hit and run tactics. You run out into the channel, you take a look. If you see anything of like a target of value, you take a quick shot, you run back home. That's what the E-boat does.
They're like the PTs.
Pretty much, but even faster.
They're like the PTs?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, these were, I'm pretty sure they were a bit faster. They were either faster or more heavily armed. It might be more heavily armed.
Well, PTs aren't small.
Well,
I mean, they're small, but they're not small. if that makes any sense.
I'd assume they had more speed and range just because it's Pacific, right? Whereas, like, Germany knows they're in pretty tight waters. Because, when you once again talking about
now, a PT boat's probably about 20 feet long, by about probably 8 feet across, and they actually have height to them because they're armored.
Well,
it's like you can stand up in it and your head won't come over the top of it.
Keep that in mind because
it's built for combat.
I know we're coming up soon on the actual like stats for the E-boat. So keep that in mind, like the length and whatnot. We're gonna hit that in a second.
Okay.
Greetings, mental illness theater fans. Looking for more spine-chilling tales of true crime to thrill you?
Then step aboard the Murder Coaster.
I'm Krista.
And I'm Matthew.
And every week we bring you hour-plus deep dives into history's most bizarre and brutal crime stories.
So strap in.
Keep your hands and feet inside the ride.
And take a trip on
the Murder Coaster.
Murder Coaster Podcast. Available everywhere you listen to podcasts.
Now, Tiger started on April 22nd, 1944, and for the first few days, everything went pretty smoothly, probably because this was not the first rodeo for the 4th Division. Like I mentioned, they had been taking part in exercises for months now. Like, they had started in January getting ready, and obviously, like you do in this type of thing, the training had become more complex as they had gone on. Once again, this is basically the dress rehearsal, the final. Everyone's kitted out and we're doing this. Now, things started to go fucky on the morning of April 27th. The plan was for forces of the 4th Division to do a mock assault on Slapton Beach at 7:30 a.m. that morning. But because of delays, the officers in charge decided to move the assault to 8:30 a.m. A message was sent out to the units in the exercise to tell them about the change in time, but either some units didn't get this message or it was misinterpreted because a couple of the units still went ahead and did the fake assault on the beach at about 8 a.m. Live ammunition from the ships firing from offshore, because remember, this is a live ammunition training, they started pounding the beach with naval fire. It was a scene of total chaos, and rumors ran that as many as 450 soldiers had been killed or wounded during the bombardment. This isn't even the main part of the disaster. This is like a sideshow to the main disaster. And if you look for details on this, like the casualties on the bombing of the beach in the morning, you can't find them. It's just kind of lumped in with, like, into the rest of what happens that we're going to talk about here. But yeah, no, the rumor was 450 soldiers in the morning were killed. Because we're going to talk about later, I think 750 is low. So undeterred, the show has to go on, right? Exercise Tiger went on with more mock assaults planned for the morning of the 28th. So you just watched that happen and you're like, let's do it again. On the night of the 27th, troops were packed into landing ships and spent the night crisscrossing Lime Bay to simulate the length of time it would take to cross the English Channel. So you're not just sitting there, you're moving around. In total, 3,500 men were packed into 8 massive landing ships and assorted other warships for the assault in the morning. So you have 3,500 men in the water, and basically the main ones are the 8 massive, and they're LSTs, landing ship tanks, which are the biggest landing ships you can get at the time. Now, these landing ships were very slow and very large, and they made a great target for anyone that might find them.
Yeah.
That night, I found this funny, they were only going about 3.5 knots per hour, which is barely above walking speed. Yeah, so these massive, lumbering, very high in the water, perfect targets, just bobbing around at walking speed in the English Channel.
Yeah.
What, 20, 30 kilometers, which would be
shrimp
about
boats.
20 miles from the German shore. Hey, what's going on?
We're just catching shrimp. It's a new design. It's a new design from the U.S.
That's a fucking funny looking shrimp boat. What kind of shrimp? It's a big shrimp you're looking for, is all I'm saying. If the fucking thing can unload tanks, that's a big shrimp.
You would think.
So you would think that for this vulnerable convoy of ships that they would have some kind of protection, right? Well, they got 2 actual warships and multiple other smaller ships, which are basically the British equivalent of E-ships, just pimped out motorboats with lots of guns. And that's it. That's all this convoy got, to make sure that no Nazi ships interfered with the exercise.
What I'm picturing is kind of like a checked up Somali pirate boat.
Honestly, you're not far off. That's that's something a lot of people would be familiar with, and it's not far off at all.
Yeah.
Yep. The other one I was thinking is, if you're old enough to remember the Iran-Iraq War, when there was the tanker war, where Iranian ships, like little speedboats, were coming out and attacking tanker boats, leaving the Persian Gulf. It was a lot like those too. So yeah, I mean, just a big motorboat pimped out for speed and just armed to the teeth. Sounds fun, honestly. Fucking hell, man! I could have a lot of fun with that.
Those shrimp ain't gonna stand a chance.
Jesus Christ. Fuck, there's nothing left. Shredded shrimp in your tank carrier. Here, you just fucking open the door and glob comes out. There you go. That ain't fishing. So, yeah, they get 2 warships that are assigned to them. And even if both these ships had been there that night, it's in the morning, it probably wouldn't have been enough, it wasn't enough to help. So the ships assigned were the HMS Azalea. HMS, it means it's also a British ship. So it's not an American ship, and that's going to come up later. This was
Don't name a warship after a flower.
They had a whole series. Actually, the Corvette series are, I'm pretty sure, all named after flowers. Welcome to Britain. And Canada had a bunch of them too, and we just followed suit because welcome to Canada. What's Britain doing? Let's do that. Fuck. Canadians are so predictable. God damn it.
You don't. No. Captain, there's a ship coming. Which one is it? It's the Azalea.
Fucking HMS Petunia's on fire. What the fuck are you?
The petunia.
Like, man, who? It's just
it's the dandelion.
exactly. It's the fucking pussy willow. Jesus Christ, what has happened? We're at war. We're at war fighting people. They're fucking, and I'm in the fucking pussy willow. Jesus.
Was that an actual name, or is it just something you pulled out?
I pulled it out, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if there's an Asian. There's probably worse, honestly. Like, seriously. If you want to have some fun, just get into British ship names. They are terrible. Now, to be fair...
Pansy.
Probably. Now, the Azalea, the HMS Azalea, was a corvette suited for anti-submarine warfare, and the other one assigned to this convoy was the HMS Scimitar. That's a better name.
That's a good name.
Unfortunately, this was a badly outdated destroyer from World War I, so it's more of a liability than anything. Which was probably a good thing that it was missing that day, because it had been.
All right, we have to all right, we need to focus more on the flower names and less on the badass sounding names. So just scimitar, just push it aside.
Could you imagine being like the sailor? You're looking at the HMS Scimitar. Oh, it's named after a sword. That's pretty cool. Or the Azalea. Like, man, they must have talked shit. That's all I'm saying. Even on the old fucking destroyer, the Scimitar, I'm still being like, I know we're basically a tub with fucking guns, but we're not the Azalea. Go fuck yourself. It had to happen. Unfortunately,
if you're gonna name a ship after a flower, that thing better be decked to the T, armored to the T.
Corvettes are,
and just it better just be the most badass freaking ship on the ocean.
British corvettes of the Second World War were the opposite of that. They were literally pretty much there for convoy protection. They were not great ships. They were not heavily armed. They weren't good at anything, honestly. So I'll get on that. Like, the flower ships were terrible. So HMS Scimitar was actually missing that day because it had been involved in a collision. So, it's at port getting repaired. This left only the HMS Azalea to protect this. Basically, it's an oversized division of men in landing ships that can't move, just bobbing in the fucking English Channel, trying to land on a beach that the Nazi Germans can pretty much see. So, with this recipe for a clusterfuck in place, the flotilla spent most of the evening sailing around, killing time before the morning, just making sure anyone around can see them. Hey, what's going on? Fuck. The soldiers in the landing ships were told nothing of what was actually going on, so they didn't know if this was an exercise, the real invasion, some type of weird punishment. They fucking, who did we piss off? They just put us in boats and leaving it. Fuck.
I got one more. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got one more. After the war is over, you got this sailor. He's in a bar. He's trying to hook up with a little cutie and everything. Yeah, I fought in the war. Yeah, what boat were you on? I was on the HMS Pansy.
Right. I mean, I'm sure. Imagine. What's the name of the British one? I'm trying to think of the fucking actual ship that blew up the HMS or the fucking SS Bismarck. But there's a huge British one where you could be like, yeah, I was there. I fucking blew it up. There's only a couple people left. What? Oh, you served too? What did you do? I was in the HMS fucking Pansy. Just fucking moving supplies back and forth. Not saying that wasn't important, but yeah, it doesn't hold up quite as well.
It's just the names.
Yeah, goddamn.
I won't go there. I won't go there with the names again. But I do want to say one thing. Like in that series, The Pacific, after the war was over, you had one of these soldiers that was in the in the thick of it. I think it was the Marines in that one, but he's trying to his high school crush and everything. He dresses up in his blues, and he goes to knock on the door, and there's this frickin' army guy, an officer, who's also there at the same time, and And the girl comes to the door and she looks at the Marine. She's like, oh, hi, how are you? I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh, I was just here to to ask you out. And then the officer dude is like, dude, I'm clearly here, okay?
Yeah, right.
And then he says, oh, okay, well, you're an officer, a lieutenant, huh?
Mm-hmm.
What division? Where'd you come from? Well, I just came from West Point.
Ah.
And he's like, and then the Marine, he's like, West Point, huh? Sorry you missed the big dance, buddy.
Yeah.
And she winds up leaving the freaking lieutenant for the grunt.
Well, I mean, battle experience. It's fucking. I guess I don't really know. Like, I mean, did we even get to that part yet? In the 2020 massacres, I think it's actually in the unreleased part that comes out this week. But it's one where I'm talking about Chad Morrison, the cop who got shot at and just kind of fucking panicked. And he's a dude I give I've never been shot at. I have no idea how I'd react. So even though he acts a little like fuck, I feel like anytime I'd be shot, I'd be the most useless person in battle, is what I'm saying. I would just shit my pants and dive in, and it'd be like, oh, look, Mark's fucking useless.
Well, I have been shot at before, and you're it's a fight or flight mentality that goes. You're gonna do one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I flew.
And see,
I hauled ass.
I
got the
have
fuck out of there.
mentioned this before in this podcast, is a lot of people forget the third option, which is my option, which would get me killed, which is freeze. I tend to not believe things are actually. Is this really happening? Did I really get shot? Oh fuck! I got shot again. This is real. I'm dead. So yeah, fuck. That's.
And now you can't run because you got hit in the leg.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'd be useless in battle too. It'd be like, man, am I really hitting this beach? Is that many people really shooting at me? This doesn't seem real. Bam.
Hey everybody, we've got yet another true crime podcast to tell you about.
But this one is different. Really?
That's right. I'm Bill.
And I'm Paul. And we are crimes, killers, cults,
And beer.
true crime stories told by two crazy Florida men.
Do you want a podcast that does well-researched deep dives on topics?
Do you want a podcast that doesn't take itself seriously and at the same time ridicules the bad guys relentlessly?
Do you want a somber tone podcast that just spouts the facts and literally nothing else?
Yes.
Nope. That's not us. You'll get the deep dive, sure, and you'll get lots of facts, but you'll laugh too.
Because you need to laugh. And when you're listening to stories about horrific monsters like Carl Pandram, Peter Curtin, and cults like Heaven's Gate and Warren Jeffs of the FLDS.
Some of them make it easy to make fun of them because of their utter stupidity, like BTK and the Pizza Bomber. Others we have to work at, but either way, you're going to get a well-researched story every time.
You'll also get crazy old Florida stories that you may not have heard before, like the murderous mayor of Cedar Key, William Cottrell, and misguided antics of a Florida bootlegging gang, the Ashleys, and the original Florida cracker, Bone Mazel.
Bone Mazel. So give us a listen wherever you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube and social media. Links to everything is on our website, ckcbpodcast.com. So check it out. That's crimes, killers, cults,
And beer.
Now, without even knowing it, this whole convoy was a much more tempting target than anyone could imagine. Because, like I mentioned, the escorting ship, the one warship they had with them, the HMS Azalea, the horribly named flower ship, was a British ship. And it was on a different radio frequency than all the U.S. landing ships. So that whole convoy, all of them, all those ships that are there to protect, they can't communicate with. They have no way of actually talking to the ships they're there to protect.
Go, why don't you just change the channel?
Don't,
Hey, are you here?
probably
Are you
some
here?
military
19.
protocol.
Are you here? 20. Are you here?
I have no idea. And this was like all night and all morning. So I don't understand. I'm with you. Like, how do you not remedy that problem? But apparently
Right.
they just left it. So there's that. So the HMS Azalea can't even talk to the landing ships.
What they got to do? Like build a bonfire on the deck and send out smoke signals?
I mean, they usually have the mirror things, right? Or some kind of light. I don't know. But Jesus Christ, it seems like it's made for disaster.
Yeah, you wind up with the scene in Independence Day where that fucking helicopter with the lights goes out, and like right up to it starts flashing lights, and then they're like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, right. Like, I mean, it's just. I mean, honestly, in some ways, this episode kind of reminds me of the Ocean Ranger, which was the oil rig that was just made to be a fucking disaster, because everything about this is made to be a disaster. Like I said, you have one ship, like one real warship. You have a couple others, but this is the one to protect you, and they can't even talk to you. Like, Jesus. So this is such military right here. Now, a picket ship, so a small...
Military intelligence, two words combined that can't make sense.
Good old Megadeth. Fuck.
Yep.
Now, one picket ship, so like a smaller ship, it did radio about a possible E-boat. Like, so they're on the lookout, and they messaged the HMS Azalea about this. But either the Azalea didn't hear this message, or, they didn't... Basically, the landing ships never hear about this. So, good job on you, Azalea. Flower ship. Now, at 11:07...
Well, at least if they had the gardenia out there, you'd be able to smell it from a mile away.
Now, at first, there was no one in the channel, but at 11:17 p.m., a German naval station on the French mainland sent a message that there seemed to be something going on in Lime Bay. So they're seeing some movement. Well, this seems like something. 9 German E-boats were dispatched to try to get a look at what was going on, and to see, we might get some easy kills out of this, because it has. And this is where we do a quick description of these E-boats. Once again, these are not normal little speedboats. They were over 100 feet. Yeah, over 100 feet long, armed with torpedoes and 20 millimeter auto cannons, and capable of speeds of 40 miles an hour or 65 kilometers an hour. So yeah, that's a pretty big, fast ship.
That's not the Somali the pirate boats. Sounds like a miniature destroyer, to be honest with you.
You probably need more protection in naval sense to get to, because I think that's really what keeps these boats away from being considered true warships, is they have no survivability. If they get hit by anything, it's fucking over.
Okay.
Yeah, but the ones also that get
it's like the dude with the flamethrower.
Pretty fucking
like the guy
much.
with the flamethrower.
Yeah, like you have massive ability to just wipe shit out, but if one thing happens, it is over. Oh fuck! Look at him. He's a
one
human
bullet
lighter.
hit you.
Get away from me! What the fuck are you walking towards me for? Oh fuck! So these were super fast, heavily armed. Yeah. So these were basically super fast, heavily armed ships that were perfect for hit and run tactics. Now, when they left, there's 9 boats. They're split into 2 groups. 6 E-boats go as like the main group, and a third one goes as a secondary group to come later. The group of 6 arrived first, and they split into pairs, and they're just looking around, unobserved. No one even notices them, and they end up in an excellent firing position where they're looking at one of these huge landing ships directly in their sights, and they're like, fuck it, how can we not? So they loosed off 3 torpedoes. It took 100 seconds for the slow-moving torpedoes to make it to their target, but when they did, 2 explosions were observed, with one ship being set on fire at 2 a.m. This was LST-507, the trailing ship in the transport convoy. It was packed with men and ammunition, and it suffered multiple torpedo hits before catching fire. So now you're stuck in this massive ship, and it is on fire and stuffed with ammunition.
Not good.
Not at all. Now, actually, these first couple torpedoes, they actually didn't explode, which was a massive problem with torpedoes in the Second World War. But 5 minutes later, more torpedoes came, and these ones actually worked. All of a sudden, this ship is on fire, and you have men bailing out from this burning ship. Unfortunately, not everyone.
Okay, I have another question. Okay, the torpedoes.
Yep.
That was, I mean, they didn't have torpedoes in World War One.
They eventually did. During the late, yeah.
But it seems like the Germans had torpedoes, but they were kind of iffy on whether or not they worked. Meanwhile, the Japanese had perfected that.
They actually, everybody has trouble with torpedoes. You want to hear something? Okay, completely off track. But one of the funniest bits of history that I know about is, like, you remember the Falklands War, where there was the British and the Argentinians in 1982.
Mm-hmm.
The British, basically, they sink a Argentinian cruiser, and they sink it using a nuclear sub. So this is a brand new sub. The torpedo they used was from the 1920s.
Oh God.
Yep, because the new torpedoes were so unpredictable. They didn't trust them. They didn't trust that they were going to run right. They didn't trust that they were going to explode on target. And the most reliable one they had was designed in the 20s. So torpedoes...
At the tail end of World War One.
Yeah, but like the torpedoes have always been an issue. But you're right, like the Japanese had it clocked in a lot better than everyone else. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to how deep they run. So many torpedoes go under their target. It's just unbelievably frustrating. Whereas the Japanese learned you have to keep them very high in the water and you're going to hit the target. So, yeah.
Well, in our USS Indianapolis episode, we go where Captain Hashimoto and everything. When they brought him over for the trial of McVeigh, he's just like, it didn't matter if that ship was zigzagging, didn't matter if that ship had an escort. I had him.
Yes.
That's one of my probably my favorite part of that story was because the frickin' brass in the U.S. Navy were trying to basically frame pin all of this on McVeigh, who was a highly decorated captain.
Yep.
So they bring him over to testify,
yeah.
and Hashimoto took McVeigh's side, and they didn't see that coming. I was just like.
I mean, that's just
Bravo.
it. I mean, if you fall into a sub trap, it's over. Like it's how they work. So, and this is a lot like that. Like this isn't a submarine, but it's the same kind of thing where you get yourself into a firing position unseen, and you hope that something moves into that position that you can hit and then run away. So in that sense, it's a lot like a sub. Now, the second pairing of E-boats fired a total of four torpedoes at multiple targets, but they missed. There were no explosions seen, so even if they hit, nothing went off. Once again, unreliable. Now, the Germans guessed the torpedoes had run under the ships and realized this wasn't a group of destroyers, but shallow draft landing ships, because, how low you sit. You were measuring a destroyer, this would be another part of it. Things like that are heavily armored, so they sit heavier in the water, whereas these ships are you're supposed to get up on the beach, so, their draft, how much of them sits below the water, is a lot less. So,
okay.
Right, so the third pairing...
I'm picking up what you're putting down. Got it now. Now I can actually envision this ship and what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, and the way they're set up, too, they have the huge door in the front that just opens, and you just drive tanks literally off the ship onto the beach, and you can also pack a bunch of troops in there, so they are fucking massive, but they are relatively low in the water for their size, but very, very, very high. So, at first, these E-boats thought these were, destroyers, didn't really know what was going on, but they knew they were going to lose in a firefight with destroyers. Now they know this isn't destroyers, we can kind of linger. So with that in mind, the third pairing from the first six there, they moved into position and they saw what they thought was an oil tanker on fire. So they fired a couple more torpedoes. There were more explosions seen, and this time it was LST-531. LST-531 was hit by multiple torpedoes and instantly set on fire. Not long after, the LST next to it, 507, also hit by multiple torpedoes and set on fire. Most of the casualties that night would come from these two ships, as men burned, drowned, or were shot by the E-boats as they jumped overboard. Not long after LST-531 was hit and caught fire, an order was given for the ships to break formation and proceed independently, like, to safety. So basically the order, every man for himself, is given. Yeah. You know, we're being shot at, fucking run. This is when a device used to save lives that led to a ton of deaths this night. Life preservers were available for the landing ships, and they were the type meant to be used under the armpits to keep the head above water. But because heavy packs were being worn by these men because they're simulating an amphibious invasion, there wasn't room to get these life preservers under their armpits. So instead, a lot of them put it around their waist where there was room, and then they jumped overboard. Unfortunately, when worn around the waist, these life preservers literally flip the wearer backwards, water dumping their heads under and drowning them. Yeah, and apparently this happened a lot. Like that's a scene that happened a lot, is that, men didn't have room to put it under their armpits. They don't have time to get the packs off, so it's around the waist, over the top, into the water, and then flipped like a fucking bowling pin, head underwater. Can't get it off their waist.
It's like
that's the end.
Being in a kayak. If kayak flips, but for some reason, it'd be like being in a kayak if the kayak had a seatbelt and you couldn't get the seatbelt. They don't have seatbelts, but for that reason. But but still, it's like if a kayak had a seatbelt and it went over, that's yeah.
I have the worst kayaking story. I had a middle school math teacher, Mr. Christopher. He got married, and on his honeymoon, him and his new wife went to Japan. And they went kayaking, and he died. He drowned in a kayaking accident.
Oh, that's horrible.
Kayak got flipped. He knocked his head. He was knocked out underwater, and that was that. It was like, fuck, that is brutal. Oh, he was a nice guy too. I liked him.
I've only been in a kayak one time, and I got waked intentionally by this asshole in a speedboat, and I didn't flip. But I was in the kayak because I had my freaking camera rig with me, and I wanted to get some up close pictures of like like cypress and like wildlife on the cypress. I wanted to get like right up on it. This fucking asshole in a speedboat just goes right by us. He wakes me. I came this close to flipping over, and I didn't. But I was just like, what? Yeah, it was fine.
Okay. Okay.
But no. If he was probably a foot closer to me, I would have gone over. And,
Jesus Christ.
But I was just like, okay, I think I'm done with kayaks.
I literally said dock once, and I was like, nope, that's too rolly under my butt. I am not comfortable with this. Nope, I need more stability. Not happening. Now, by this time, it was 2:30 a.m., and it was complete fucking pandemonium in Lime Bay. Because, like I said, the order was given out, get the fuck to shore, get safe, this is over, exercise over, every man for himself. And in the middle of this, LST-289 was hit by a torpedo, which completely destroyed the crew's quarters. So, like, a bunch of fucking people dead right off the start. Also taken out was the rudder and the rear guns. The rudder's pretty important because that's how you aim a boat. Like, I'm not boat people, but I know that much. You need that. Now, flares were shot up in the air to give the area some light so you can see what the fuck you're doing, because once again, this is the middle of the night. And the landing ships and other ships, they fired at anything they thought was suspicious. It's coming now, right? In this melee, there was a friendly fire incident where 18 people were injured when one landing ship mistakenly fired on another landing ship.
Why was it called Operation Tiger? Just curious. Any reason? Because it sounds like it should be called Operation Clusterfuck.
No idea. No clue. I mean, yeah, Operation This Is Gonna Go Wrong. You should have known this from the start. Why the fuck did you do this? I know it's a long title, but,
Yeah.
you know, someone should have seen that there's a lot of potential for problems here. So by the end, LST 531 and 507 were both complete losses, and LST 289 had been set on fire, but it actually made it back to shore. Another landing ship was damaged, and for the E-boats, for their part, no casualties, no boats taken out. Like, they did this hit and run. They made it back home. The only problem they had was when two of their ships accidentally collided with each other. So it was a good night for the E-boats. The official losses of Exercise Tiger are not exactly clear. The official death toll is 749 servicemen, 551 from the U.S. Army, and 198 from the Navy. But a little bit of math, I mean, it makes this seem a little suspect. When broken down, the number seems more like it could be about 950,
Right.
and that doesn't even account for the casualties taken on the beach the morning before. Because from what I saw, they said 202 people killed from LST 507, 18 from LST 511, 13 from LST 289, and 736 from LST 531.
Yeah.
Right there, that's about 950. Like 736 and 202 is 838. Plus 13 is 840, 851. Plus 18 is, oh my God, I'm high on edibles. But yeah, I mean, woo! I just started looking at a lot of numbers and trying to do math, but I mean, right there, you're over 749.
It's just like if they're trying to make the numbers seem lesser, but so they like, okay, this ship lost this much, this ship lost this much.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna hope that nobody adds it up 50, 60 years later in a podcast. And so we're just going to say 749.
And that's another thing about this, too. Like, you hit on something very important that comes up a bit later. This is completely because, like, it's on the run-up to D-Day, it's covered up, and it's completely forgotten until the 1970s. And you are going to laugh about, like, how it's found out. It's so British.
Oh, by the way, speaking of this, speaking of what we're talking about, like cover up and not going to talk about it. The charge of the dead men, our episode that's coming out on the 30th. Yeah, if you ask a German military man, that never happened. Well, that's good. But no, 100 dying men pushed an entire German battalion back.
Oh, of course not. If you ask the Germans, a lot didn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, less critical than the loss of life during this whole Operation Tiger was the complete loss of the two LSTs, the landing ship tanks, because this was a type of ship that the Allies did not have a lot of, and they were absolutely critical for the D-Day plans. You need these to land like tanks on beaches, which is the whole start of the invasion of Europe from the Western Front, which is, the UK, US, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the loss of these two LSTs, that was the entire reserve that the Allies had for LSTs for D-Day. So if any other one broke down or wasn't available for the day, there was no backup. There was nothing there to replace it. So the loss of these two LSTs was a huge loss for the Allies, and now it's kind of, you're biting your nails hoping nothing goes wrong, because if it does, there's no backup. Actually, this is how big they were. Yeah, Winston Churchill, well, if you don't know Churchill, he's the prime minister of the... He's a massive asshole, but he's the prime minister of England during, like, the Second World War, and basically pulls them through. He literally said later...
Every every Iron Maiden fan knows who Winston Churchill is.
Oh, absolutely. And most people have an idea, but not quite. And the easiest way is, I mean, he's the PM during the Second World War, so he's pretty fucking big.
Right.
And he had a quote about LSTs saying, quote, "The destiny of two great empires seem to be tied up in some goddamn things called LSTs." So he's literally saying, like, I don't know who the second great empire is. I guess the U.S., even though it's not really as threatened. But he's literally saying, at least our empire, it comes down to these fucking LSTs, and I don't even know what they are. What the fuck? And perhaps the most terrifying for the actual D-Day planners was the loss of 10 officers during this who knew the detailed plans for D-Day. They knew everything that was coming, and they were lost during this. And the problem was they couldn't locate all the bodies. So man, they fucking went off trying to find these 10 officers to make sure, I hate to put it this way, but that they're dead and not being held by the Nazis.
Make sure they're dead, yeah.
And being tortured to compromise the entire fucking D-Day plan, because these guys knew the entire plan. They knew what was coming, and had they been taken prisoner, who knows? But eventually, all 10 bodies are recovered. The Allies stop shitting themselves, and they're like, okay, we blew this plan a little bit, but they don't know exactly what's coming. So
just a little.
Yeah, just a little. So like I already mentioned, I mean, with D-Day imminent, the Allied commanders, they did everything they could to cover up the events of Exercise Tiger, as well as what had happened, like the disaster of it. Any civilians that became aware of what happened, such as medical personnel, were ordered to keep what they had seen to themselves, or they would be prosecuted, possibly for treason, which at the time carried the death sentence. So,
not anymore.
Fuck around and find out. But I mean, yeah, funny about that, but that's a whole different. We were talking about that earlier. That's an earlier talk. But this wasn't just the civilian.
I couldn't resist.
That was
sorry.
actually fucking perfect.
Yeah.
But even sure, they're going to tell the troops not to talk, or shit, I fucked that up. Even the troops involved were told not to tell anyone what had happened, and the families of the dead were just told, "Yep, your family member died on April 28th. No explanation. What happened? Just sorry, they're gone." All right, I guess.
Well, you see, your son or your husband or your brother or your boyfriend. Well, oh wait, this is back in World War II.
Yeah.
They didn't say that back then. But it's war. It's war, and they were killed in the war. Yep, that's it.
Well, I mean, they could have
war.
just said this. The horribly named fucking flower ship fucked
who
them
killed
up,
him?
So, yeah.
Who killed him?
Germans.
A soldier.
I mean, they can literally
Germans.
say the Germans did, so at least you have that. It's not like, that was us. Yeah, no, that was we fucking killed our own soldiers by mistake. Hey. But it's funny you should mention the Indianapolis, because guess what they used for the explanation? They said the captain of the Azalea did not zigzag that night and was going in a straight line. Yep, which made them too inviting of a target, and it's all your fault. So they used the exact same thing. I think it's just a go-to for the Navy if they want to blame someone, honestly. It's just, you weren't zigzagging.
No. That was before. The U.S. Navy saw that excuse, and they're just like, all right, that's what we're going to use to frame McKay.
Yeah, no, he got the shaft. He got fucked.
Well, it could
Didn't
be.
he kill himself after?
It could be. But during the Pacific Theater in World War II, the U.S. lost 300 ships. There was only one captain that was court-martialed, and that was McKay.
Yeah, no, he got the shaft. He got fucked.
He did.
Didn't he kill himself after?
He did. He was posthumously
Yeah, fucking hell.
He was exonerated.
Posthumously, yeah.
Yeah, he was exonerated.
I have trouble with words.
Still,
Don't worry. Yeah.
He's dead.
There was also some blame thrown at the actual naval base that was trying to coordinate this. And it's basically them who let the Azalea be on a different radio frequency than the American landing ships. And honestly,
I have a CB in my truck. I get 40 different channels on it.
you can switch channels too and find the one you need.
Yes.
Yeah. Apparently these.
That's my point.
These guys are just like, yeah.
And the technology of CB radios has not changed at all in the past 100 years.
Right. So yeah, no, I don't understand that very much, but yeah.
I mean, the new ones might have LED lights on them instead of a dial, but still, it's the same technology inside the box.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, so the Plymouth station did get some flack too, but overall, I mean, this is pretty much covered up. And then after D-Day, now the Allies did release that, I have this written weird. Okay, that's it. In August 1944, the Allies did release some of the facts of Exercise Tiger. They said that 39 men had been killed in the exercise, but honestly, this is August 1944. This is when the invasion of the Western Front is going huge. There's so much news going on. This is just missed. Like, people don't...
Yeah, it's like page 12.
I mean, we brought up 9/11 before. This is like dropping a story on 9/11. That's actually a big story. Who the fuck's gonna notice? Because 9/11 fucking happened. So this is pretty much where you're at here. So they did release, this happened. We made a mistake. There was problems with this exercise, and 650 people died, and people didn't even notice. And after that, it was just completely forgotten.
I didn't know about it. I did not know about this.
Yeah, no, this is one, I don't even know how long. It's been a while, but I mean, it took a while to find, because I do a lot of World War II shit, and I was probably well into my 30s before I ran into this one. Now, like I said, luckily this had little effect on D-Day, because like I said, the Germans are convinced the whole time that it's going to be the Pas de Calais. So even though they know an invasion's coming, and they saw ships, they kind of know an invasion's coming, and the deception plan of Operation Quicksilver really kind of pulls the wool over their eyes. So there's that. Another big thing, though, is that because of the failure of the life vests, these were the life vests that were going to be used on D-Day.
Well, yeah.
The planners really quickly switch these out to get better ones in place, and this probably saved lives on D-Day. So there is that bit of positive from this.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was just going to say. At least they learned from it, and it does. I mean, still, it just the whole thing was a clusterfuck. Should have never happened, but at least they did learn something moving forward from it. So it is a successful I said it earlier, a successful failure.
Yeah, that's why they do these types of things, right? Because so you don't end up with, that's why I brought up the Dieppe raid. So you don't end up with that. You don't work anything out beforehand, and you do it, and in the moment, everything falls apart. And luckily on D-Day, that...
But still, they shouldn't have been using live ammo.
I mean, I honestly...
They shouldn't have been using live
ammo.
ammo.
Like with the life preservers, you could have tested that with a dude wearing his kit. Oh, I can't get it under my arms. I'm going to put it around my waist. Oh, don't put it around your waist. It'll fucking drown you. We have a problem. You don't. Yeah.
Oh, even then, it's like, okay, let me put it around my waist. I jump in the water. I flip over. I've got people in the water that can
exactly
save me.
Right. So yeah, you're not in basically what become battle conditions in the middle of the night finding that out. Yeah.
Right.
There was also an overall breakdown of command that was looked into and mostly resolved. There were also There were a lot of problems that were pointed out from these attacks, like alarm systems. A lot of people on the LSTs didn't know how to use them. So when shit was going down, they didn't know how to... Like, it's not just a simple fire alarm. You have to know how to use this system, and many people didn't. These were all problems that were kind of fixed with the actual D-Day invasion. So, The other one is, thankfully, they came up with using a standardized radio frequency, which all ships, regardless of nation, would use. Right.
Golf clap. Golf
Good
clap.
fucking
Golf
job on ya.
Golf clap.
Jesus. So yeah, and like the actual details of this were published in 2 magazines, but once again, they were kind of just overlooked. There was so much, and this was post-war, but you also have all the publications about the battles that happened. Not too many people cared about a failed exercise before D-Day. They wanted to know about D-Day.
Right.
Like, how many games are made about D-Day? How many video games are made about Exercise Tiger? People want the action. So, they published it, but nothing really happens.
Well, you want to be able to win at a video game.
Just dying in a burning fucking landing ship for tanks that I can't get out of. And my life preserver just flipped me. That's the end of the game, is you just drowning upside down in the fucking English Channel.
In order to
That's
win,
not fulfilling.
in order to win the game, you have to die.
Right. Fuck. So yeah, this went completely, just basically reported and forgotten until the early 70s. And then a resident of the area, a guy named Ken Small, he so British. He was the type of guy, he would go to the beach with his fucking metal detector, just look for stuff. And he started finding military buttons and shrapnel and bullets and pieces of military vehicles.
Wow.
He was like, what the fuck is going on here? That's I expected some shit, but that's a lot of shit. Now, he could find little evidence of what had happened on this beach, but older residents in the area told him about Exercise Tiger. And then, because fishermen are fishermen, a local fisherman told him about an unidentified object about 3/4 of a mile off the beach. When Small investigated the object, he found out it was a World War II American tank. So there's just a tank less than a mile off the beach.
Just a tank in the water. Well, our official statement on that is it's an artificial reef. Yeah, we put that tank there deliberately to generate artificial reefs. Yeah, that's our story, and we're sticking to it.
The stuff you don't want to know that's in the water. I've mentioned multiple times me and Gina are both originally from Halifax in Eastern Canada, which has, if you listen to our Halifax Explosion episode, has a big harbor.
I listened to that one. That was intense.
That was a lot. There are rumors, pretty good rumors, that there are actually shells filled with mustard gas still sunk in the bottom of Halifax Harbor to this day.
Oh, I got one better.
Oh, Jesus.
They're off the coast of Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, God.
There's a broken arrow.
Oh,
There's
fuck.
a nuclear bomb in the ocean somewhere, and they have not been able to find it to this day.
The amount of lost nuclear weapons.
And it's armed.
That's something we should definitely do a collaboration on. Lost nuclear weapons sometimes. And it's just,
Fuck
we'll
yeah.
fucking lose our minds. Holy shit. So Small, this dude fucking...
And
Go ahead, sorry.
I've been to Savannah. I've lived on Hilton Head Island, which
shit.
is just across the. It takes you like an hour and a half to get to Savannah from Hilton Head by car.
Okay.
But by boat it takes you about 20 minutes.
Oh, nice.
But not Savannah, but the outer areas of that. But still, yeah, I live right there.
Nice.
Right there. I could have been living less than 20 miles away from a nuclear bomb.
Best not to think about it. Fuck. And people, I'm just going to point this out. We're getting near the end of the episode, so I'm going to point this out because I don't say this enough. And you're also from Florida. It's so sad that Florida and Florida man gets that wrecked when fucking Georgia is right there, man. From what I've seen, Georgia is so much more fucked up than Florida. It's not even funny, man. That place is fucked. It's a fucking dumpster fire of a state. Like, Florida's funny fucked. You know what I mean? Like, man does what with Gator? Jesus.
As a truck driver, I will take driving in Miami or Tampa or Jacksonville over driving in Atlanta any day of the week. Or even Orlando. Because it's but if you're there's spots in Orlando that are pretty bad, But and there's spots in Tampa that are pretty bad as well. But still, you're still going to be in that traffic jam for maybe 30 minutes tops. Miami, you're going to be in it for about 15, 20 minutes or so, but at least you're moving. In Atlanta, you will be in that traffic jam for 30 fucking
I'd be so
miles.
angry. I couldn't take that. That would fucking kill me.
Just, Atlanta, a lot of people, okay, if you're listening to this and you don't know, your listeners that live in Georgia probably know all about it. but yeah, Atlanta is right up there with Dallas, Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York City as the worst places to drive. Atlanta, and you would never think that, but it's true.
So back on track to finish this fucker off. So when this guy Small, this dude, he's like, okay, so there's like this thing 3/4 of the mile off the beach. What is it? It's the Second World War American tank. He actually negotiated with, this is a tank from the 70th Tank Battalion. He negotiated with the battalion and bought this old tank for $50 in 1974.
Score!
Right, so he buys this old fucking rusty tank. Now, it took him 10 years before Small actually, with the help of a diving company and local fishermen, he actually raised the fucking tank from the bay. Like, he gets it out of there. Yeah, with
He
the
shouldn't
support
have
of-
had to pay for it. It's salvage.
Well, it's funny, though,
He shouldn't
because,
have had to pay for it.
it started that way, and then families of the people who had been killed got involved, and then eventually the American government got involved, and it became the Sherman Tank Memorial Site in Kingsbridge, UK, which is one of the few things that actually recognizes that this happened. But yeah, no, this guy Small, he basically paid for the salvage, he gets the tank up, and then he gets the support of the families of the people who have been killed. Eventually, governmental backing comes from the States, actually through President Reagan, and that's how you get the Sherman Tank Memorial Site in Kingsbridge, UK. This is one of the few war memorials, like, I'm pretty sure it's the only one to this disaster, and it wasn't actually made until the mid-80s. So it was like 40 years after the fact before anything, but at least there's something now, right? Like, so, I wouldn't mind either. Go to Kingsbridge, UK. There's just this Sherman tank. It's the Sherman Tank Memorial. And, it's for the at least 749 men killed that night and morning. So, there's that. The Exercise Tiger. Whew. The war ones, man. We get a little sidetracked. It's funny that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I probably don't know about as much about war as you do, but I do know a good amount. And I had never heard of this.
If you like that story, feel free to rate a review or follow us on... Oh, sorry, I'm cutting you off. What's that? Yeah. If you like that story, feel free to rate a review or follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify or whatever app you use. It helps a hell of a lot. We also have merch at PS Cats at Redbubble. We have a Patreon with patrons. They are Cat Roop Wagner, Cat Roop Wagner's hilarious son, Melissa Jusick, and Nathan Lucas. Bill, you have all this stuff for crimes, killers, cults, and beer, too. Oh, actually, if you send the links, or I'll get the links and add them to my show notes, too, just so people can find you. Yeah, right? We'll put all your socials up, though, too, because, I mean, if you like us, you should definitely check out, once again, Bill, what's your podcast?
Crimes, killers, cults. Go ahead and say it.
And beer.
There you go. Yeah, and our website is ckcbpodcast.com, and all the links are there, and that'll probably be the easiest thing for you to, post, because everything's there.
Cool.
So, but yeah, just for a little bit of history about us for your listeners, Mental Illness Theater was the first podcast that actually was nice to us.
Yeah, we're
when
weird.
We
We
first
don't
started out. So yeah, what he said earlier,
Long time friend of the podcast.
well, what he said earlier is just like from the long-time friend of the podcast. Yeah, I mean, I think we were probably 12 to 15 episodes in when I reached out to Mark. So now we're like 150. 115.
Mm-hmm. And we're weird too. We'll talk. We're friendly to everyone. We just don't reach out to anyone because we just do this. You know what I mean? Like, we don't do it properly when it comes to actually trying to promote ourselves. We're like, what the fuck? We're supposed to talk to people?
Well, I'm a promotion. I'm a promotion whore. I mean, I do collabs all the time.
No, I mean, we really should, but we just kind of do our thing. But yeah, we will add that all in the show notes, and you should definitely check out CKC because it's definitely worthwhile podcast to have a listen to.
Yeah, and if you go, I don't know, but I can't remember your early episode. I've listened to probably 90% of your episodes, but I do know that if you listen to our early episodes, yeah, we've come a long way.
It takes a while to get everything going, right?
Yeah.
Like, it takes a while to find your voice, as it were. So, but 100 episodes in now, you got it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, right.
Anyway, that was great. I had a blast. Thank you for asking me to do it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it very much. and until next time.
And
have fun. And play
by
safe.
the way, and give Gina a hug for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, she'll be feeling better here soon. Good. So she's doing good.
All right.
All right, everybody. Until next time, have fun and play safe. Bye.
Later.